Joining me now is author Joan Didion. Her new book, Political Fictions, is a collection of essays about the American political process. Need I say more? If Joan Didion is writing about American politics, it's got to be interesting, and I'm pleased to have her here on this program this evening. Welcome.
Thank you.
What brought about Political Fictions?
A
subject that you had not invested yourself in, American politics.
I had never looked at domestic politics until the '88 convention, '88 campaign, and I started looking, and I was really appalled.
Yeah.
And
appalled at the way it was covered, or appalled at the way it was intrinsically?
At both those things. Yeah. Appalled at the way it was intrinsically, and appalled at the extent to which the way it was covered collaborated with the way it was intrinsically and enabled it. It was, I mean, it was astonishing to go out on a. I mean, it's not astonishing to any reporter because they've done it, right? But it was astonishing to me to go out on a campaign, before an election, and find out that it was a series of setups. That it was very like. I mean, I had spent some time, a few weeks, in the White House press room in the '80s, and it was very like that. That was again an astonishing experience. You had a series of little events.
But with respect to political conventions and political coverage, you had, first of all, you had books like Boys on the Bus, which was a sort of chronicle of what it's like and how that takes place.
Right. So why was it so amazing to me? Because it was still going on as if it was tabula rasa, as if the Boys on the Bus had never been written. There it was.
I see. Can I take leave of that for a second and talk about the coverage of a great event that we're witnessing now?
Well, as a matter of fact,
an event that is both, has all the elements. It has all the human story right here.
I was surprised by the extent immediately afterwards and in that first week leading up to and immediately after the President's address to the nation, which took place, I think, 8 days after the event. I was first of all, it was an event so great and so grave that it seemed to me that everybody would just be quiet for a while, but suddenly it dropped right. People managed to assimilate it into their existing agendas with a rapidity which was kind of astonishing to me, and suddenly it just slipped seamlessly into that sort of 24/7 dialogue with everybody getting on their favorite, whatever that agenda, their particular agenda had been before they managed to find a further justification for it in this event.
Right. So in other words, if somebody has a point of view about the way the world works, this was a chance to connect it to this story and express it one more time, or use it as confirming evidence.
Then we get to the President's address, which I was watching from San Francisco, in a hotel room in San Francisco, and I am astonished to hear Judy Woodruff and Bill Schneider talking about it as if it was another event in the endless campaign, talking about how it played. Did he do what he needed?
You mean Bill Schneider, probably.
Bill Schneider, I'm sorry. Did he do what he needed to do? Did he do what he needed to do politically? They could have been reviewing the
acceptance speech at a convention.
Exactly. Yeah.
But how should it be considered, the President's speech? I mean, it seems to me that, because I was part of this process.
But you did very good stuff that first week.
Well,
that was,
fell off after that, did it? No, thank you very much. But I mean, I didn't. My point, I think, was to ask you, how should you cover the speech? I mean, it seems to me that this is the most important speech, recent political speech, and the political speech, I mean that in the sense that this is the world of politics. These are politicians dealing with what they are supposed to deal with: national security, economic recovery, and all that.
So, absolutely. But what we could have talked about the substance of it, as opposed to talking about how it played with the American public.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I'm not quarreling with because everybody covered it differently, and I'm sure that's true. But I mean, I think that a lot of what I did and what I saw was in some sense of saying, okay, the President, this was the most important speech, and the President had to speak to a variety of constituencies around the world, in the room, political, and America. And it seemed to me, he said, look, you have, this is a speech I thought was rather impressive. This is, you were asking these questions. And he's really literally used this speech to answer some of the questions. What happened? Who do we think is responsible? What is it we're going to do? And at the same time, touching bases that were important to say, that we want you, the world, to know that we don't view this as somehow, America versus,
versus Islam.
We don't view this, as something that we cannot be responsive to, and all of that. So it should be, I would assume, even though it's a political speech, judged on the basis of some sense of what is it important for the president to do at this moment, and did he do it? Is that inappropriate?
Well, I don't think
because that's content.
I don't think it's inappropriate, but in a sense, the people I'm talking about were talking about it exclusively in terms of how it would affect his domestic ratings. One of them was saying that it would be a long-term plus for him because what had been his negative, which was what was beginning to be called the Bush economy, was no longer the Bush economy. It would be the Osama bin Laden economy.
Yeah.
Now that was pretty disturbing.
So it was all viewed as the political fallout.
Yeah.
What do you find, and give me a sense of the sense of all of a sudden you're seeing a range of people, as you say, who've been asked by the networks and frequently signed up to contract by the networks, and I mean a whole variety of networks, to offer their expertise about these events. I mean, is that constructive? Is it not constructive? Is it what?
It's kind of amazing to be away from it for a few weeks. I mean, I happened in June to be someplace where I wasn't watching television, I wasn't reading the paper, and it was amazing to be away from opinion for 2 weeks. I came back actually very, very revived.
Having thought about it more, or what?
Having thought about it more.
Yeah, and made your own, tested your own brain as to what this means.
Yes, because
rather than just simply being a repository of what other people think.
A blunting effect, and also a lot of what goes on all day, and all night on with this constant opinion. It is the clash of it. I mean, the confrontation sometimes seems more important than the exploration of something. I mean, there's very little exploration. There's a good deal of confrontation.
Yeah. You were writing, in the process of writing a book about California.
Yeah,
when this attack.
Yeah, I will go back to it. I haven't been working on it.
How has this affected you? First of all, there was a question as to whether you would do a book tour.
There was, yeah. I mean, I really thought, I couldn't imagine anybody wanting to talk about anything in the wake of this. And I talked to Sonny Mehta about it, and
he being the editor-in-chief of Knopf.
And he thought about it and said he thought that it was a good time because the people wanted to talk. Suddenly people wanted to talk about politics, in fact. They wanted to talk about the process. They wanted to talk about it. And it turned out, I did go to the West Coast, and it turned out to be people were amazingly responsive, and did come out and did want to talk. And it was a good trip, actually. But there is a sense, I mean, I don't think any writer in America didn't feel the day it happened that everything they were working on or had worked on was in some way irrelevant. And then you started...
That was not unique to writers.
No, right. And then you start finding ways in which it just deepens your understanding of what you were doing, or, I mean, it's a new level.
Help me understand that.
Well, when you're writing a book, sometimes you come up to a point where you can't go any further, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, and then suddenly you think, well, you take a week off, or you take a month off, or sometimes you take a year off, and you think. And then you come back with a new level. You are a slightly different person than you were when you put it down.
Right.
And you come back with this new thing that you have assimilated, this new way of understanding the world. And that, I think on September 11th, we all suddenly got a new way of understanding the world.
Are you going to write about this?
No, I don't think I'll write about it.
You're not going to write something for the New York?
No, I don't think so.
Review
I've read so many words about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think journalism has done well. Do you?
yeah, I think it has. Yeah,
You know,
I
I
do.
really do. I mean,
I think it's been amazingly complete. I mean, there have been wonderful side pieces that everybody I know talks about. Like there's one in the Times on the engineering of the towers, right?
Yeah. I know. I've seen 1,000 pieces.
Yeah.
I mean, I just sometimes feel bad because I can't read all that I want to read
I know,
because
you
of the
just
press
can't
of the day.
tear yourself.
Yeah.
You keep thinking, if I could save this.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
And the room would be packed with, you know, because you want to read it. I mean,
Yeah.
in magazines and newspapers. I think the newspapers have just done a spectacular job of especially the Times, which we see first
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
You know, in
And
terms
it's
of
its story.
Exactly. In
Yeah.
terms of the depth of the coverage.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that they're sending some of my favorite people to cover the war in Afghanistan. You talk about journalists in this book, and you talk about the genuflecting at the mantle of objectivity. Tell me about that.
It's one of those things that everybody who goes to work on a paper or goes to journalism school, I
Worships
guess,
at.
worships at. It is objectivity is supposed to be what the reporter is, but it has a different. I think the way it was meant was that it meant that you are supposed to maintain a critical intelligence about the things you are told. It doesn't mean you are supposed to not analyze the things you are told or put them together with what the person told you yesterday and say, well, that doesn't quite add up.
You in fact suggest that in some cases it is used as an excuse for sort of autopilot reporting.
Excuse for basic
incompetence or laziness.
It's not just laziness; it's access reporting. It's people whose access to sources depends on their telling the story the source wants told.
Yeah.
And if you
or you lose your access.
Or you lose your access. And a lot of people, it seems to me, in Washington who do political reporting are overly reliant on their access.
Do you have any heroines?
Well, at different times in my life, I've had different kinds of heroines. I remember once meeting Claire Luce and thinking she would enable me to get old, you know.
Because when she was older, she continued to write and to be active, and she was ambassador,
and she lived in Honolulu,
and she was at the center of politics.
And she was beautiful.
Yeah,
and yes.
right.
Yeah.
And combined both sort of a creative side as well as a political side and a power side. She was both into power and art, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she was a fascinating woman.
Did you know her?
Well, I met her in Honolulu. Because she was out there, and she had a listed telephone number. So we just called her up one day and went over.
What was the genius of Ronald Reagan?
The genius of Ronald Reagan was probably, and I can't call it his genius.
I didn't want you to quarrel with genius. I mean by that it could be his
Yeah.
instinct for something, but I'd say the same thing about others. But
I think he had an instinct for. Somehow people liked him. It was.
take you a long way in this world.
Yeah, he managed to convey a sense of being likable. For some reason, he never conveyed it to me. I mean, I thought of him as sort of that unlikable, least favorite uncle who is really kind of mean if he doesn't get if he doesn't get the piece of turkey he wants.
Never thought of Ronald.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But most people perceived him as a really
Decent.
good, decent man, and I think in all generally he was.
Katharine Graham you liked?
I liked her a lot. Yeah.
Because?
She was a really. I think one of her sons said about her at her funeral. that there was no difference between she had no public face. And this seemed to me the most acute thing about her. She appeared to be she had no way of dealing with it, but this was very attractive to me. She had no special public way of dealing with people, which which made her seem vulnerable and shy. But that wasn't exactly it. It was just that there was no public face. I mean, I thought that was a really acute thing.
Yeah. She also had, she had a strong sense of who she was as well. I mean, that was true that she didn't have a public face, but she also had a strong sense, I think. She knew who she was, you know. I mean, she'd been vulnerable, she represented to me, though, what she represented is that there is this sort of stunning potential within all of us.
John and I once watched her reading. We sat across from her on a plane back from Paris, and we watched her, and she was slightly ahead of us. And all the way across the country, all the way across the Atlantic, she was reading. She had the papers with her, and she took them out, and she was very much self-taught, and she would read she read the papers in such a thorough way. I've never seen anybody read the papers so thoroughly. And then she had special things, and then she made notes. You know, I mean, she was still like a schoolgirl in a lot of ways. She was
in terms of the way she approached information processing.
She was it was very attractive.
Joan Didion, political fictions. Joan Didion writes amazingly well, and this is about sort of an observation about politics in America and other things, and I'm always pleased to have her here. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.